Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film Aberrance. For the title of this, I'm going to call it a 2024 film because that's when it's become available in the United States, which is where I watch my movies. But originally released in 2022 in Mongolia. Yes, this is a Mongolian horror film, and this is the first Mongolian film I've ever seen in my life. Not just horror, Mongolian film in general. So very interesting to see film from other cultures that I haven't seen before, so I was very glad to be able to do that. I did rent it through Vudu, and it was $4.23 with tax for the rental, so it's pretty cheap. I think it is good to kind of support very low-budget independent filmmaking, especially if it's from a country that's not really known for film. I can't think of any Mongolian films I've ever heard of in the United States. So I'm just glad I was able to check this out. And that said, I didn't love the film. I will go over what I really liked about it because there are some really good things about it and some things I really didn't like because there are some things I really did not like about it. But let's talk about that. Directed by, and I'm going to do my best on the names, Baatar Batsukh, and written by Batsukh as well as Byambasuren Ganbat, and translation by Trevor Doyle. Again, Mongolian film, so there are subtitles for it. Synopsis. It's basically about a man and woman who are going away to this remote cabin. Very nice wintry landscape outside of it that you do get to see sometimes. And they're kind of not having a great time with their relationship, and it's kind of about what unfolds in that cabin while they're there, and the issues between them, some weird things that end up happening in the cabin. And there's something else that happens that I don't really want to say because it is kind of a big twist for anyone who actually wants to watch the film. So let's get into it. The beginning seems very generic. And that's kind of one of the big things with this film, and one of the big criticisms that I have heard about it online is that there are a lot of things that seem taken from, well-known films here. I don't really fault it too much for that because, again, this is coming from a country that's not well known for film. I don't even know how big the film industry in Mongolia actually is. So, that's just something that, you're going to end up seeing those types of things. Even in the United States, when it comes to low budget independent filmmaking, a lot of scenes you'll see kind of ripped from other films, and you do end up getting that with this. But in the beginning, the story, the setup to it, be like, this seems pretty generic. And for the most part, it kind of is. The script is the biggest problem with this film, in my opinion. I think that it needed some editing. It needed a lot of editing. It needed a lot of story changes. It felt very confused. It felt like a lot of ideas kind of thrown into a blender, like we like this about this movie, and this about this movie, and this about this movie. Throw it all together and just see what comes out. And there wasn't a whole lot of focus on the story aspect, even though there are a few kind of interesting story elements that pop in. It's more about the visuals of this film, and the visuals are phenomenal. From a directing and cinematography standpoint, it's really good. I would like to see what Batsukh can do, given a much larger budget and someone else's script. Bring this individual to a studio where they can set him up with a really good writer and be like, look, you have the visuals down. You know what to do. Take this really nice script and make something great, because this individual has that ability as a director, and whoever did the cinematography also take that individual, although it may have also been Batsukh. The camera work is quite good. Some interesting angles and framing. Like I was saying, it's a very engaging bit of camera work. It's moving a decent amount. Like I said, some interesting angles that they throw in here and there, and some framing. From a visual standpoint, it is very pleasing to watch. The problem is it gets very slow and has terrible pacing and kind of boring when it comes to the actual story elements. And a lot of scenes, it's like not a whole lot's going on. Things get very repetitive. Again, going back to the issue of the script not being very good, unfortunately. There are some scenes with weird color saturation, which I believe is due to the use of green screen. It's in a few shots that are outside, which is kind of weird. I didn't really understand that. It's like you can see kind of like the weird color halo around the people that you can end up getting with bad green screen. and that's at play there. Also, like I said, the color saturation is all off, and those scenes really stick out as just being very weird and not great within the film. So it's just kind of jarring to see those things. Character emotions seem to make shifts based on the littlest things, or sometimes even nothing at all. Again, going back to poor writing, the characters are very poorly written, very poorly developed. Well, they're not really developed. They're just very one-dimensional for the most part, and there's not great characters. Now, that said, the acting, I think, is decent. I think some of these actors did the best they could with what they were given. Again, if you don't have a very strong script and you don't have strong characters, there's really only so much that actors can do with that material. And I think that a bunch of these actors really did the best that they could. So it kind of ranges. There's some pretty good performances to some serviceable, I guess, performances. The score is very simplistic and effective. It has a lot of pieces that will have one or two off notes that kind of denote something being off in the scene, something being wrong within the film. Score is one of the biggest strengths about this film. The way it looks visually, and I think the score is very interesting. The composition of the music, also with how it's used, it's kind of a bit more restrained, which I am a big fan of doing that. So those technical components are the biggest strengths of this film and would probably be the reason to see it. Also, just, I guess, to see the twist at the end, which is kind of interesting. CGI in this is used here and there. It's not that good, so just know that. I mean, based off this green screen looking comment, I guess you would probably assume that I would say that the CGI didn't look great. CGI doesn't look great, but then again, I don't know what this individual had to work with as far as a budget went, and it does seem very low budget, so it happens. It doesn't seem like there's much of any story here, but rather just a series of things happening. Again, like I said, taking things from a bunch of different films, throwing them into a script and being like, whatever comes out, comes out. It moves quite slowly, unfortunately. It does get pretty boring throughout the film. The ending is kind of interesting, but it really does end up being too little too late. And it's also a little confusing as well. It seems like it needed to go a little bit further at the end and explain a little bit more, but it just kind of gave you a little something, and then it's just kind of like, yeah, we're done. So you're like, okay, not the greatest. Again, writing's all over the place, which really kind of makes this movie hard to watch a lot of the time. There are moments where it's interesting, but for the most part, it's not, unfortunately. But I wanted to be able to give a better review to this, but it is what it is. So out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'll give it a 2-star rating. I was between 1.5 and 2 stars, but I'm going to go 2 stars because that score is really good, and I like the way it's used, and cinematography is wonderful. I mean, it looks great, and there's a lot of inspired stuff in there, and I think the actors, for the most part, did what they could. So 2 stars on this one. Don't really recommend it, but if you want to see a Mongolian film and you want to support low independent horror from Mongolia, it is only less than $5 to rent on Vudu, so that's not a whole lot. But you make up your mind. If you want to talk about this film, if you've seen it, go ahead and put it in the comments. Or if you just want to talk about anything in general, go ahead and do that. You can also talk spoilers in the comments. That's fine. Do me a favor and hit subscribe to my channel if you have not at this point. That's your best way to repay me for all this free content. And I do appreciate it. It keeps me motivated for the most part. Also, hit the thumbs up on any video you see if you want to help me with the YouTube algorithm. Another thing you can do to help me out. And what's the last thing? Notification bell button. If you want to know when I'm putting up new videos, you can hit that and it will let you know. But regardless, I really do thank you for taking your time to watch this. And until next time, keep it brutal.